I guess it's Wednesday. I'm losing track of days again. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. Okay. Let's get a Royalist time marker. Over there. Flight levels 22 for the Royalists. 25 for the Barons. No special rules here for that. Okay. So this is the Battle of Lewes, which we have covered before in the Simon Says module. But the system's been updated. I don't know. I know that I kind of grumped about the old version of it in the sense that, like, yeah, I'd kind of gotten used to the Men of Iron stuff. But what I'm seeing with this so far in this volume kind of scares me. But we'll see, because this is a somewhat different different setup. So what do we got? We got the beginning of the Barons' War here, a lot of the background on it, and I guess the interesting thing is Prince Edward, yeah, that's Edward the First there, has charged forward and is launching kind of a preemptive attack, an impetuous charge, while the rest of the Royalist army is back here. Now, you have some options in this one. For example, other than Edward's force, all the Royalist mounted men could be dismounted men-at-arms. That seems like not a pleasant thing to do, given the amount of distance that they have to cover. But it might not be a bad choice, because the Barons have an army that looks a little bit like something that was deployed at Agincourt. Not quite. We don't have longbows in it yet. For the baronials, well, we have a fair number of archers built in here. A good center of them here, which I may have to move around or something. Like, I usually like having my archers on the flank. I put these here because Edward's coming, but then I put some up front here, and honestly, I'm beginning to think I want this to have them on the wings here. And over here, I'm going to shift one of these over. You also have some better defensive units. Now, if we take a look at the pike over here, the Royalist pike, it's not set for defense. But it may be that with similar kinds of troops, so I'm not really, I don't know, it's possible that the Royalists had to raise up forces that weren't really ready compared to the baronials. But we have sort of a mixture of quality in there, with some -1s and 0s and whatnot, instead of what you see with the Royalists, which is almost a uniform +1 pike. We have a few 0s in there, but their defensive capability of their pike is not as good, which means if the attack goes badly, it's quite possible that their infantry contingent will be, you know, in a lot of hurt in a way that maybe this has a little bit more standing power. And then what's really interesting to me is Simon himself is back here with sort of a reserve force. That is an appealing idea in this system. It's kind of funny. You don't think of reserves too much in the medieval period. But this system actually does a really nice job of showing the value of reserves, even though most of the battles don't allow for them. And the reason for that is, look, if one of your wings gets, so you can only activate 2 of your battles at a time, you know, generally, you have two of them engaged at a time. Just because of the way that the continuations and whatnot work. It's possible to have more, but unlike Great Battles of History, it doesn't force you to move all of your units, right, each turn. Like in GBOH, you know, you activate every leader, right? Some may fail or whatever, but in general, you activate every leader. You may be able to increase I guess the intensity of the battle in a certain area. A good leader does that, and an overall commander can lend some support to that. But instead in this, it's really just based on the leaders. The overall command, like, there's no forcing each unit to have a go, right? So the battle ends up being kind of lopsided in a lot of cases. But what that might mean is one of your battles, I hate using that term, ends up really weak. And then instead of having to strip somebody from the other flank and do a counter march across the field, you actually have a reserve in place. If you have the excess of forces, a reserve makes a lot of sense in this system. But again, it's weird because the kind of games that portray periods where reserves were more commonly used, so many times they just don't make sense within the game. You know, they don't really give you much. You'd be better off throwing everything in the line. And in this period where reserves were not all that commonly used, quite often something was put in reserve, but it wasn't the good stuff. It was just like this hope, you know, of like, well, we don't actually want that in the line. It's too weak, but maybe it'll serve some purpose if, you know, things go really well or something. I don't know what they're thinking. It could blunt an eventual attack where you've got like masses of peasant forces or whatever in play that don't actually engage for the most part. But that's not what we have here. Here we have better than the normal forces. You also have the option in this one. There aren't a lot of men-at-arms. There's one here, I gave him a dismounted. I'm questioning whether or not I want to give Simons a dismounted. Again, you have that option. All the royalists could be dismounted. Might be useful for climbing the hill. After seeing Hastings and the impact of a slope on Hastings, I'm not impressed by it. I just don't feel like I'm facing a situation where, you know, we're looking at dismounting, you know, the entire army to make it up. The terrain's not that bad. All right, what about special rules here? Okay. Uh-oh, maybe we got something else here. I see another rule that maybe makes us do to dismount the royalists. The royalists are going to go first, and they must activate Chester's battle. There is an option to make it less historical, but Chester is Edward. There's no shield walls. Like I said, timed engagement. Terrain loses about 150 yards off map from the northeast. Henry III's main forces just slogged across a marshy stream. That's kind of useful to know, not because they're tired or whatever, but the idea that there really kind of is an edge to this map. What's behind them isn't pleasant. That's not always the case. All right. The impetuous nature of the royalist mounted men-at-arms. The royalist must roll for pursuit after each retired or eliminated result such a unit obtains against a baronial unit. For Chester, a 0 to 9 will result in the attacking royalist unit pursuing the defending baronial units off the map. Chester's charisma is used as a positive DRM to this pursuit roll if he is stacked with the royalist unit. So he can call back the unit, more likely. But a 0 through 9, yeah, so Yeah, it's a retired or eliminated. Now, here's what's weird. Let's go back. If a royalist mounted man-at-arms pursues a baronial off the map, the baronial is eliminated and the baronial FP for eliminating the defending unit is added to the track. The pursuing royalist is removed, but the FP are not added. If the leader is stacked with a royalist MM that pursues off the map, the leader is replaced as if the leader was eliminated. I don't know about points, but okay. Oh, I would guess none for the royalist. Okay. For all other royalist battles, a 0 through 5 will result in the attacking royalist pursuing the defending baronial off the map. Each pursuit roll will be modified by the attacking royalist unit's defense die roll modifier, used as a positive DRM. What does that even fucking mean? Okay, because these guys, oops, that's not one. These guys normally have a -1 or a negative defense modifier. The pursuing royalist MM is removed, but the unit's FPs are not, no, that's the other thing. A roll of 0 through 5 will result in the attacking royalist unit pursuing the defending. Each pursuit roll will be modified by the attacking royalist unit's defense roll modifier used as a positive DRM. So adding a negative would be bad, but like, okay, at least we have an example here. You know, when you word something that makes no sense, like, I guess that's useful. Okay, the attacking royalist MM, -1 shock, adds +1. Okay, so I don't know what happens if I have one with a +1 DRM. There may not be any in this battle, but yeah. So the higher quality, better armored units will be less likely to pursue. Is a leader involved in this? I don't see any leadership thing. So there we're looking at a 60% chance of chasing. See, this is interesting because retires become destructions. But if you start retiring a bunch of enemy units, you've kind of won the battle. So I have the option, and it's not like I have a lot of these. I have the option to turn, I think there's 2 mounted men-at-arms here, into guys who cannot chase, who are a little bit slower, but you know, if we're moving up with the pike, maybe that makes sense. On the other hand, the mounted men are really, really more impactful. First of all, they have the charge table, which they can use. Second, let's take a look. Dismounted men-at-arms against pike is +1. Mounted men-at-arms, I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm going to dismount my men-at-arms, so I'll hunt those down. There's one other thing of interest here, which is that each side only has 1 standard. The Royalist standard can be put anywhere on the map. I put it back here. I may have to activate it and move it forward, which is an unpleasant concept. Maybe I'll just I'll push it forward some more, because I just think that I'm not going to be able to get my troops on the board very quickly, back in the battle very quickly if that happens. This feels very exposed, but whatever. And then for de Montfort and the baronials, we have one here, and it must be placed there. Their setup is actually pretty much fixed. Okay, I did want to keep this mounted man because he's got no pursuit problems, and he also is, I think, a useful, I think a mounted man is useful for certain kinds of attacks, and having one in reserve seems more valuable. For the other guy who had one, having a dismounted man-at-arms there. I feel like that, especially since I'm right up facing Edward, is probably wise. Okay, I'm not sure, because for the first one, for Cornwall here, he's got a weaker unit, but this one's got a -2 on it, which means it goes from a 0 through 5 to a 0 through 3. I still would rather not lose it. I still think that's a valuable man. It's too much of a chance, and again, they're better against the pike, which is the majority of the enemy force. Better in a way. The charge table... See, the thing is, the charge table is so useful, but it's more likely to force me to make those die rolls as well. So, yeah. It's so useful, but I may end up off board, and I don't want to do that. I'm a little worried about Edward here. He looks like he's going to cause himself a lot of problems. And where actually, if he stays on the board, it would be more problematic than if he does pursue. Although it's a timed battle and all, there doesn't seem to be anything that actually requires Edward to be impetuous. He's up there, he's got his cav, he has to take the first activation, but he doesn't have to actually attack. I could, fall him back a little bit, or just leave him where he is. I have a lot of options. And honestly, from a gameplay perspective, I think I would take them. I want to do what happened, so I want him to launch his attack. But it is a little disturbing that they go, to the extent of writing special rules and whatnot to make sure that he's up there and ready to attack. Okay. But he's not forced to. It doesn't feel, it feels like the player is left with options that maybe they shouldn't be allowed. With my understanding of how well an outflank worked at Hastings, we're doing one here. We're going to charge into here. He does not get a return fire because we always have to check this, but that side fire capability is, I believe, only available if you're being shot at. When fired at, the return fire and before, this cannot be done through the rear. Reaction fire is only through a frontal hex. And there doesn't appear to be any kind of pivoting or anything. There's not going to be any charge reluctance here. So we get a charge. We're going up the hill, up a level. Shock charge DRM is just -1. There's no terrain that's problematic enough that it causes real issues. And let's just compare. +2. I did move first. I didn't put the marker there, but +1. +4. Hitting in the flank. +6. Wow. Oh, we're going to chase these poor archers off the map, and that's stupid. Oops. Defender eliminated, continue attack. Okay, so this is interesting. He's gone. That's going to be worth 2. Let's put the continued attack here. I go up, and I hit this next archer, but this is where we get to a weird spot. Because do I pursue that archer, or do I hit this one? To reflect the impetuousness of each retired, I think it happens right now. A 0 through 9, oops, I leave the battlefield. Okay, and I'm going to put this over here because it's not an actual lost unit. which means that I'll get confused by the numbers. So yeah, hitting those poor archers was not a good idea. It's very hard for me to believe that that is what the mounted men would do. I can believe that they chase down some regular infantry and whatnot. Although even that's kind of iffy. If you're chasing down anything that's like not... But the game has so many pikemen that that's not terribly useful. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to hand out my chits. Let's do that. The king actually lost this battle. And wasn't completely deposed. It kind of brings you to the rule, because Simon ends up being hanged later. Kind of brings you to the rule: if you're gonna take the king down, don't just capture him or anything like that. Execute him. Execute him. Cromwell got away with it. Those who killed the kings tended to last longer than those who were like afraid to do that. But anyway, a big part of that is Edward's willingness to launch this impetuous charge. Okay, what do we have for chits? 3 seizure opportunities and a negation over here. That's a pretty good pool. And then here, a seizure opportunity and a crappy battle cry, which I have to think, because once more into the breach is an offensive chit, therefore battle cry cannot be the offensive chit, so it's the rally chit. Yeah. That's how I remember this. I will never remember it simply by the name, because the name isn't indicative. If it said rally, I would remember what it did. And if the other said +1 shock charge, I would remember I would know what it did just from what it says, instead of these stupid names. These are fine. Okay. Do I want to let the royalists continue? In a sense, I don't feel like it's worth wasting a seizure opportunity. Let's let, them try and let Edward do his thing. I don't know. Okay. I'm gonna fire off, I guess, Cornwall, get him trying to cover that next. And he fails, which means this is on the right side. The time marker doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. Like right now, we're on a free activation. It goes somewhere if I pass. Sure, let's pass. That hands it back to a free activation here. Well, I don't want to do this. I don't like what it's doing. I want that hammer to come down only when, the army is up there, if I'm going to be facing so many penalties. Basically, I automatically lose one of these cav each time I attack. It's just not worth it. So we will indeed move those. And because continuations and whatnot, I may end up... It's not like the time's going to run out, though. That's the thing. It just can't. When the only way the timer runs out is you passed when given a free activation, that timer means nothing. There's no way you're going to win by playing that thing out, unless the opponent is refusing to do to attack at all. This slow approach makes things different. I'm going to pass again, because there was a failure to get a continuity or whatever over here. So I may end up forcing, because of the long distance in play, the English to attack simply to make me do something. But, if Edward wears out his force, even if he causes me significant damage, I can still pass and let these guys trickle forward, and if they screw up, they screw up. And I can use seizures to prevent them from getting double turns and such not. Seizures don't sound like a great idea, and here's why. First of all, I have to do it before he makes his roll, which doesn't allow me to disrupt his activation as it's happening. Secondly, it doesn't give me the opportunity to pass, which is the whole point that I'm trying to do. So I'm just handing him back a free activation or whatever at that point. So what we got was a sequence of a lot of continuations by the Royalists. And I'm moving Cornwall up here, and Henry is trying to get this flank. I'm just moving my way up. And again, you know, I'm taking my time as much as possible, and that thing is just not going to budge. I really don't see a way. Like, I feel like you can completely outflank the enemy. You can do whatever the hell you want. That timer doesn't do anything, again, unless the opponent is just saying, yeah, you attack. You know, that is all that it's doing. That is all that it's doing. You're allowed to, you know, and yeah, this one was out at 12. Sometimes they start at 10, but there's a lot of extra space to cover on this one. But the other ones, it just doesn't have any possible effect. I mean, again, it just prevents one player from saying, I'm not going to attack. And yeah, I've seen situations like that in games. It's a solution to that, but nothing else. It doesn't give you some mechanism by which you can win the game if they decide to bring their reserves up and whatnot. If they decide that Edward's impetuous charge is just going to be checked. And I'm actually planning on using Edward, because of his stupid pursuit rolls, as follow-up attacks rather than forward attacks. I'm just going to shift him around or whatever, force them to deform their position by the threat of Edward, but never actually attack with him, because there's nothing that requires him to attack. Again, he's not under, you know, there were restrictions on the Agincourt scenario for this, and wow, I just always have to bring it up, but where the hell is it? The SPI Agincourt, which is basically like a game which simply plays itself and is this miserable experience in rolling dice and whatnot. The French actions are absolutely forced, and the English have basically no decisions to make. They just are killing the French as they're coming. And you're playing as the English, which I guess, you know, you're not as scripted, but it's like, it's not like you have many choices. They're just walking out there in front of you being killed. It's time for another break. It's funny, my mental state has changed a little bit. Throughout this, I was never like energized to the extent of, oh, I'll go out and do this or anything like that. And there's still always this sort of vague, although it had definitely blunted. So my life is made up of periods of assuming I don't have very much longer to live. There are physical reasons for this. Hoping that I don't have much longer to live, and all that, which is sort of generally packaged up in itself. And those are my better moods. And my worst moods are really, really wanting it to end real soon, you know? And like the hoping and expecting, those are like, I don't know. It depends. It's just this blur of time and whatnot. But all of it is kind of predicated on this. I don't want anything else to fucking change. It's bad enough as it is, right? And all the changes that could possibly happen are bad. Now, going back to work was possibly not bad, right? Might have meant differences in my life that change everything. But all those other pending issues are still out there. And yeah, every single one of them is negative. And as long as I keep making choices that are not going to improve. So I've been making choices that do not decrease my eventual misery, right? Like things like I'm not going to go get more clothing. I just, even though I'm obviously not getting any thinner again, I'm just, fuck it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to last long enough that I need more. I'm not going to last long enough that I need to find another pair of sneakers outside and need to walk around looking for them. A lot of it, though, has to do with where I am. Like, it's very comfortable here, and there's nothing around within really easy walking distance. Like, it's at least an hour to the nearest Goodwill type location. More than that. Like the one that I'm willing to go to, it's like 2 hours. It's just everything, and there's no furniture or anything. The only thing that there is that shows up on the street, in the garbage here, my usual way of shopping, because that's how things get close, is back in the park, the trash. There's sometimes food there, and I used to, whenever there was like, a wedding or something like that, I used to run back there either that night or the morning and see if there was anything interesting. No, I don't even bother. I don't bother. There's a place that probably is putting zucchini and all kind of interesting things out that I could eat. Just someone's garden, and they share it with the neighborhood, and I don't go there. I don't bother. Everything's like not worth bothering, and a lot of it is predicated on this. I don't know if I'm going to live another week. Knowing I'm not going to run out the timer, I think the best thing to do is prepare my defenses a little bit. I'm going to activate over here, shift this a little bit. It's not like I'm holding the slope anyway. I could actually shift my entire force, which might not be a bad choice, so that I am holding the slope. Shoot a few arrows and everything. The added advantage of taunting the men-at-arms, because I forget about this, but I just recalled it. There is a forced charge here. Where is it? Is this only in Infidel? Shit, I can't recall where to find it. There's something that causes a reaction charge. Maybe it's under countercharge rules. I didn't notice this. I don't know if I tried. I think if I did, I failed anyway. Yeah, there's some kind of reaction countercharge. It's so fucking hard to find stuff in this game. I don't know if it's the structure of the game or just of the rules that cause it. But as the rules have bloated, it becomes much, much worse. Do we have a reaction countercharge here? The reaction fire, we knew about that. Countercharge 13.6, 13.8, that's just the rules on it, which should all be one set of rules, you would think, right? Countercharge against shot. Countercharge against fire. Heavy cavalry men-at-arms may choose to charge missile units. Okay. Choose. It's infidel that requires it. So I could choose not to countercharge, which might be important because I would be wasting another man-at-arms against the archers if I countercharge. Either way, breaking that unit up and forcing it to take an activation to recover one unit or whatever, it seems like a good idea. So, how am I going to do this, though? It feels so funny to take a line where you don't have most of the slope. I mean, look, you know, what does the slope do here? It costs an extra movement point, no big deal. What is it doing for me here? Nothing. Here, well, these two hexes are protected, but again, you know, you're trying to optimize how many protected hexes do you have, but if the enemy is going to take their care in their attack, they can avoid the effects of the terrain that you're on. I don't know quite, I don't know what to do because a solid line is very helpful, right, in defense. It's much, much better than a jagged line all over the place, I think. So here's the worst case. The solid line at best gives me a DRM of 1. Or I'm sorry, the terrain gives me at best a DRM of 1. If I conform to the terrain, I'm going to be giving all kinds of opportunities for a higher strength enemy to hit, to say nothing of outflanking and whatnot. A higher strength enemy to hit is a +1, so it negates that anyway. So yeah, I don't think the terrain is worth focusing on. It's kind of funny because this almost looks like, I think we're talking about, I'm trying to remember which of the great battles. I think Agincourt, but it might have been one of the others, Poitiers or Crécy, where the French were basically funneled by the terrain. And the charge, like, the fact that the French were charging, they actually, just the way horses work and whatnot, it was hard to keep them from getting funneled into this horrible kind of mess. Now, maybe the terrain was a little bit sharper, but it looks like just rolling hills when you look at the area that it's supposed to be in. I saw some docks on it and whatnot. Anyway, I'll try to figure out my best way of taking advantage of this and kind of refusing my flank. To disorder the unit, it's not going to charge under those conditions. Gotta say one nice thing about the glossy paper maps. Although I've seen some of them dissolve, I got a little bit of tobacco smear that goes on a map. It's not coming off. With these, it does come off kind of nicely. So I didn't used to smoke, so it wasn't a problem. But yeah. All right, like, I don't know. I started smoking cigars when I was about 20. But the pipe was a little bit later. I don't know how much later. Just thinking. Like, it was after the year I left, like I stopped being a regular student in college, but I don't know how long that took me. Like, I'm guessing 24 or so, somewhere around there. 24, 25, I picked up the pipe and slowly gotten more and more addicted to it, and it definitely is messier. Plus, I mean, I couldn't smoke a cigar while I'm playing a game like this. We're over on a free English or royalist activation. I noticed something I screwed up. I shot him as though he was a foot unit. I remembered the die roll was very high, so I gave him an unhorsed result. But I noticed something neat there. I think I remember seeing this before. Now, I don't think this showed up. I don't know. So I've got a little dagger here for unhorsed. Almost looks like a question mark to my poor eyes, but there is no reference to that. I think that is he's also disordered. So that's the result that I gave him. And then I had a number of activations, and you can see the entire line managed to shift. The last one was made here on Simon himself, because Simon, unfortunately, he's got him in command. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got him in command, but he doesn't have this guy who looks like he's going to be facing the biggest problem right away. So I actually tried to activate Simon just to get him a little closer, maybe be able to give a bonus to anyone. Notably, Henry here does not give any bonuses. He's got a little 0 in that tiny little box to any commander. So it's kind of okay that he's off on his own. Simon was an effective commander. Edward, he's going to be in charge in the next battle, and obviously he's a good leader, even if a little too gung-ho in this battle. Cornwall makes his way up. We get a free activation over here. I might want to do something. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, passing, it's just not going to do it. So I'm thinking I plink, you know. Some archers are remarkably effective. I unhorsed another one with another good die roll. It has to be really good die rolls, like an 8, because there's a -1 for shooting at the mounted horseman. Yeah. And I noticed that I had the wrong unmounted there, so I fixed that. And shifted Simon over a little bit, get his reserve in a position, making sure the flag didn't go with me. We got another free activation here. I don't know what to do. I feel like bringing these guys up is my best move rather than launching the attack. Because this would be my best attack, honestly. It's kind of the complex thing. If I wait for Henry to get up to the front, like if I decide I don't want to activate, I just pass. Simon can start pushing this. But that might be his best move. To trigger some kind of action over here instead. On the other hand, as the royalists, maybe I want to get the action started. I don't know. Like, it honestly feels to me I want Henry up there before I get these there. So yeah, I'm going to just pass the action. Let Simon make his choice. Does he want to keep plinking? Plinking is effective too. Especially against those dismount. You know what? No. There's no requirement that I attack with Edward. So I can recover with him. The continuation, whatever it's called. It's not a continuation here, is it? Continuity, something like that. Did not go in his favor. So yeah, plink, plink, plink. I retired a unit, and again, we didn't get our continuation. So we went here, hoping, you know, maybe we'll shift around a little bit, get ourselves another attack in. Oh. Again, it's being so effective. Why not? Just shoot Edward down while he's up there. A series of continuities here. Got a couple of shots in, or one at least, I don't know. Anyway, we've disordered and retired one of the unhorsed units. This one is a mounted unit that got disordered and retired. Those were shots against Edward. He had to make 2 casualty checks. That could have made things much worse. Yeah. And I think this is a game, if you roll for a continuity, you have to move a piece. But that's not a big deal in general. So like I shifted a mounted man. You can just do something to prevent anything too exciting from happening. But now I'm sitting here, so this is at 4, -3 is 1, make it, I'm not in range, oh, I am in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, I needed to shift him. So I don't know if I'm at a 1 or 2. have to recalculate. But certainly a 0 would have worked. So I get another chance. Now, everything's out of range now. Shift here. Oh, that's against archers. Don't want to do that. But I could shift my archer out there. Just keep tempting him. I'm dissolving fucking Edward's command here with my archer. And I actually destroyed another one. Now, you know, I can activate the standard and recover a couple of those, but this is actually the first destroyed unit. And yeah, Edward is pretty much knocked out of the battle. Just like, I could have activated him and shifted him over and not gotten as close as I did. But again, these could have advanced and started peppering him, etc. He's just in a stupid place when it comes down to it. With high value things, so we're seeing the English dropping down. They get a free activation again. And again, I'm going to move Henry because, well, I don't know. I just don't want to use Edward yet because I don't want his units running off the map. I'm like absolutely violating the idea of that impetuous charge situation, but paying a price for it, but a weird sort of one. And I think I'm better off paying that price than either attacking. The better move would have been just to fall back and not use him, right? Hold him in reserve as I advance, because that time limit is not going to have any effect on this. So there's no way that the rules actually cause you to use Edward how he historically was used. Rinse, repeat. Henry's getting close. Actually, I should have been activating this to pepper these guys. Oops. But I've been focused on this, and I just keep trying to pick off this unit. I got 2 shots against it, but the odds are not good. They're 20% on each shot, right? An 8 or a 9. But, they're not that bad. Especially since the alternative is just kick that time marker down, and that's not going to end the game, because I will not be able to pass. Like, it has to get down into this range for it to be worth thinking about in general. And it's not going to get down into that range unless you're doing it constantly. Here, I'm getting a definite advantage out of not passing, even though the English are dawdling. Activated Henry, moved around here with some pike, moved some crossbow up. This is the first fire of a crossbow unit in the game. It's also the first time I think we've had return fire happen. Maybe we had it in the first battle. This is return fire. I can fire out my flank because I'm being shot at. This is a crossbow at range 2. Not optimal. It's about the same. But I want to soften that up for the attack. We're going to see if we can crush his whole flank here. Okay, gray is not going to hit shit. I think that's a disorder. Which will help quite a bit. And now I get to continue the rest of my movements. I can put a fired marker on that just to remind me not to shoot it again. The crossbow I don't believe can arc fire. Not sure where that is. See, yeah, longbow or archbow is raining fire. That's the arcing roll. Crossbows wouldn't make sense. Can't use them like catapults. Henry launching the attack. I got a couple of pikes. These are all shocking. Don't get confused because I put a marker for somebody and I didn't for everybody else. We managed to kill one archer, retire another. So we got a few points on them there. Now let's resolve the attacks. So the initial blow, hey, we got lucky here. We got unlucky, or not unlucky. I mean, we're at a disadvantage hitting these defenses. These are better defensive units than we've been hitting in other games. But hitting that archer, which really is, those archers are really kicking themselves for not having fired. I got 3 archers knocked out at this point. Hitting that archer was, wow. Who died here? How did he die? Oh, he got charged down. Yeah, okay. That's right. But we got a continued attack coming against this. Now, it doesn't bring the engaged unit in, but it does bring that in. So we're looking at a -1, but we have an angle of attack advantage, which puts us up to +1, and another -1 for the continued attack. So we're at a 0 on it, which isn't, you know, but it's not bad. We only get a 4, there's a no result. That's going to get us another engaged. Now it's time for the big decision. I think the Royalists want to try to activate Richard, and my idea is to come down this way and try to improve on that outflank that I'm getting. Fuck Edward. He's been distracting them while I move forward. However, I think this is a pretty important time for a seizure. How big do I want to go? I don't think this is absolutely vital, but it's pretty big. There's no negation. And we get one. That is going to allow us now to activate this and come in and try to fuck up Henry. And so we got a launch of a number of attacks here. I'm using the charge no move. You know, you could use it instead of a charge counter, I guess. It doesn't have an arrow in it, so it feels kind of fucking weird. I'm using it as a reminder that I did move. Just because. Otherwise, I don't remember to look for the penalty. It's better to remind you that there's a modifier than to remind you, oh, there wouldn't be a modifier. What the fuck? Anyway. I really think they should look like charge markers. They should just have a -1 on them. Like the regular charge should have a -1. The charge no move should not. Or something. I don't know. And they should look similar. Not, you know, the charge no move is on the other side of and looks like no move, no fire. Which just means you're rallying. God. Fucking crazy game. Anyway. Let's get those attacks. I wasn't able to get in anywhere else interesting. We'll see what we accomplish. We might end up, you know, pulling back with these or something. I don't really want to launch an attack from here, so driving Henry back seems like my best move. Those horses push the pikemen out of the way. Elsewhere, things did not go well. We got a draw and an attacker disordered. But the horsemen broke through the flank of those pike, drove them out of the way, and now I'm hitting a pair of archers. Now, the archers do not get to shoot. If I was charging, they would get to shoot. If I marched up to them, they would get to shoot. This continued attack, the friendly forces getting pushed out of the way, they don't get a reaction. And let's do this because it's a double attack. I'm hitting 2 archers. Let's do this one first. A mounted man against archers, that's +3. I'm hitting it in the front, no bonus there. +6. +5 for the continued attack. Not a charge. What did I say, +5? A shitty 0. Okay, that's going to cause an engaged result, maybe, kind of, sort of. Hitting this one, we were saying +6, +7, +8 from flank. Drop it to +7 because of the continuing. Okay, that gets us a 16. That's a defender disordered retreat a hex. I don't advance because I didn't get a continued attack, so I end up locking into there, if I recall correctly. I have to look that up. So this is under the engaged optional. When a unit attacks 2 units, ignore the engaged result when combining engaged and retreat results. Also ignore engaged in combination with continued attack, but not with advance. So this is the weird thing. Is it his retreat that allows me to ignore it? I don't think so. I think that if I had to retreat, I wouldn't become engaged. But as it stands, I think I do get tied down with these guys, even though I pushed them out of the way. That puts me on a chance of a continuation. We gotta swap batteries very shortly. I think what we want to do is try to trigger him. So he's a 4-5. Now, do I want to seize this? I mean, a 5 is a pretty good chance. I'm going to try to seize this, and he's going to negate it. And this seizure was used. Okay. Which means I get to try to do this no matter what, even if he had another, or even though I have another, no. Even if he had another seizure. And then I've got Battle Cry. What does Battle Cry do? That allows rallies. Okay. Had to think through it. Had to think through that whole chain. It's not into the breach, therefore it's not the wrong thing, the obviously wrong seeming thing. Therefore, I just think you fill in the breach as a reserve, not as an attacking function. Yes, I know. But the Shakespeare isn't like as fixated in my head as actual, like, you know, military concepts are. So what am I doing? I'm looking for a 4. I'm looking for a 5 because it's got a -1 there. Just a -1. All right, we get to do him. And I'm going to have to swap batteries because we're running low. Okay, so what I'm doing is I move my leader over here. I pulled this guy out of the way. He's disordered. He wants to recover. This guy, I'm hitting a disordered unit. Fuck it. I'm going to try to break him up. Actually, I can only attack the unit in front, and I don't have to, I think, turn. I think it's only... I think I only have to turn if I'm not facing any enemies. So I think this engagement would be a double hit on him, but I can hit with just 1. And I'm hitting exactly the unit I want to hit. This guy's hitting a somewhat damaged unit, and he's hitting it from 2 directions. That's awesome. And otherwise I got out of the way. All good. And I've got my leader in here. Do I want my leader in here? Yeah, sure. The 2 directions is a big bonus. So that looks pretty good. By the way, I'm having a good old time with this game. Any bitching I give, this is just, you know, such a relaxation compared to either the Summer Storm stuff or I was doing XXs before, which were a pleasure, of course. But there's just something fun about, you know, the beer and pretzels nature, chucking dice, moving units and everything. And here's another thing. So Summer Storm gave me this horrible, horrible feeling of, I'm playing this incredibly detailed, this detailed but incredible, an attempt to become incredibly accurate game, and it gives me all these opportunities to fuck shit up, right? That's the first problem. And all that fucking shit up is getting rid of any advantage that I have in playing this. And the disinclinations to attack and all that. Whereas this, I'm like, I don't know, if I fuck something up, so what? You know, it's not that accurate anyway. And also, I don't know, it just pleases me so much more to play something of this nature. Which may be surprising to some of you because I concentrate so much on the history, the accuracy of the nature of things. But it is just fun. And I find this so much more fun than, say, take a look at some of the Avalon Hill Classics, which are these really kind of thinky type games. Not complex or anything, but you're constantly figuring, you know, if I get a 3-to-1 there, I have a 75% chance of getting this, and that's what they're designed to do, is to put you in this kind of optimization framework. This one, no, fuck it, man, I'm just charging forward and I'm rolling some dice and I'm having a damn good time, and it feels more believable in a lot of ways because of that. All right, maybe I like GBOH a little better, but there is just some charm to a system like this. I guess it's kind of like the Warhammer minis or whatever, the same thing that gets people into that. Or some of the I don't know about Warhammer. I'm always making fun of it, so I'm like trying to reach out an olive branch. But when I remembered like the Fire and Movement, I think was the name of the game. It was an ACW one. Really kind of lightweight game, but really let you just push pieces around and attack. And I kind of hated it because I was only in charge of like 1 or 2 units. Everybody was. It wasn't like they were picking on me or anything. And it's just such a simple system. But when you're doing something kind of big, not that this is, but if you're doing something kind of big like a Gettysburg or something, it's kind of fun to just push a lot of units around and chuck some dice and have a good time. And have it be mostly realistic. Doesn't have to be hugely detailed, doesn't have to go into a hell of a lot. Gives you the story without a lot of effort. But gives you the story in some detail. As opposed to like Summer Storm and the Avalon Hill Classics, they're about, you know, getting your odds right and all that kind of shit. All kind of finicky shit that like doesn't feel like you're commanding the battle. It feels like you're doing some kind of logistical work, you know, to optimize the number of men you're putting on a particular salient or whatever, which is just not the right feel, in my opinion. I should be a little more careful about my thinking, though. Plowed through those pikemen, pushed these guys down, plowed through those, destroying them. More points against the English here. But oomph, we hit some disordered men-at-arms. Or not disordered, dismounted. That's going to hurt. So I got pike versus DM. That can't be good. That's a -1. -2, -3, -4. Make it -3. I mean, I can survive, but I'm going to make a leader loss check and all kind of ugly stuff. Attacker disordered, retreat a hex. The interesting thing about this game is there's kind of no zones. So there's my retreat. I'll push this way for various reasons. The defender doesn't get to do anything. Still haven't trampled any missiles, damn it. All right, now I make a leader casualty check. And there are no modifiers, so that's kind of cool. And I survive, which is awesome. I think we go back to Simon. He is out of seizures, so he's not going to stop me. And I'm at 5-4. We get to keep playing. Widespread attack on Henry. I felt so clever doing that outflank there. Oh boy, it's not working. Oh boy, it's not working. The reserve is a powerful thing in this. Very powerful. Not turning out as impressive as I had hoped so far, but I'm going to try to trigger him. He'll be at a 4. We're going to see if we can wipe Henry out, basically. We do not get it. That puts us over for a free activation here. I'm going to pause for a bit. I've been having too much fun. But honestly, it's what it feels like. I feel fatigued for the amount of enjoyment I'm having out of chucking dice at this game. It's really a lot of fun to play. In a way that, like, I consider other heavy dice-based games, which I kind of enjoy, things like Britannia or Victory in the Pacific or something, that are just like, you know, chucking masses of dice and doing hits on things. I just find this so much more fun. I like those. Those are fun games, but when it comes to at least just tell such a great little story of the battle and everything, even when they get it completely wrong, it's still fun. It's still fun. And honestly, in some ways, much as I respect things like Desert Fox, that I think is sort of Berg's masterpiece, I think this system is up there as the most enjoyable one that he designed. Out of everything I can think of. Going all the way back to where it was, you know, in little hand-printed folios and he couldn't get anybody to publish it. with the like the Simon Says stuff and things like that. He couldn't get anybody to buy into it and polish it up or whatever. The whole flavor of it is great, and I feel like Arquebus and Blood and Roses take the system a little too seriously, and are starting to get into stuff where it's just getting a little too complex and everything. This one's returning to the roots in a lot of ways, even if I don't believe some of this stuff. Like, I just think the values, something is wrong in Hastings. Either the shield wall values have to be better, like the shield wall itself has to be stronger, or the values of those units on defense have to be a little stronger. Because here we can see the English tried an outflank, and you know, it wasn't really repulsed, but it wasn't all that effective, and then a reserve was able to do something. A little bit different disposition of units, maybe a few more units in the background or whatever, not just a couple of axes, like a Huscarl unit that you could just command to throw in. I don't know, because, yeah. Anyway, I'm having a good time with this one. Even down to Edward getting his horses shot out from under him and everything. The main thing I'm facing here is I've got to hope for the best, activate Henry, and see if I can get a series of activations so that I can get him back into some kind of shape. I pulled back. I played the battle cry chit. I don't know if I really want to, but it allowed me to rally this unit to that state. And oh no, it allowed me to rally that unit. Then I could do the no move, no fire action, which allows you to rally as a side effect. You know, it would be neat if it gave you different things that you could do if you put the no move, no fire on. In that case, I would say, it makes sense. But I don't think it does. I don't think there's anything else you can do with it. That spent my battle cry chit. That's kind of painful because now he knows that I've played both my chits. That's probably the biggest negative to it. I don't know that I pay enough attention to that kind of stuff. Even when I'm playing opposed, I don't know that I really pay attention to the fact that my opponent has a chit off. He might be able to pull something off. The real question, though, is, do I want... I'm going to try to activate, I think, Cornwall here. I don't know. Because I really want to have all these horses together if I'm going to do anything there. Do I want to activate Cornwall or... Well, I do. But does he want to try to do a seizure here? And I kind of think I'm going to let him do what he wants with this. Because I'm not that worried about that. I might be worried about Henry going again. But instead, I get a free activation, which, you know, I get to do it without the cost. Now, what do I have here? Let's let some more gather up there before we trigger it, right? Number of my moves, attacking across here, I'm going to charge this mounted men-at-arms, hitting these pikemen from the side. All that makes sense. I fired at this, got a disordered result, coming up close on them, recovering here. But now I've got a puzzle with these four. A tough puzzle, to be honest. So I could charge with this, and that would leave him here, which is not necessarily a place I want him. I would love to have that pike come in here and hit from the flank. If I move him, he'll get a penalty, and then I could get the try to charge these pikes. It might fail, might get a charge reluctance, whatever, and I'd also have the penalty on that. But they're kind of weak. I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to move like this, put a charge, and I'll put the marker that I use because it only makes sense that way. This gets me out of a problem where I'd be facing the crossbow attacking. Shift this here. That's where I want him. What about Simon? Do I want him in the charge? He gives a bonus to the charge, doesn't he? Does he affect the charge reluctance? He doesn't. these are okay units. They'll be better than most. And see, I can attack both of these, hitting this from the flank. That might not be too bad. What is this? That's a really nice pike unit, which is a great place for him to be because he's safer there. But if I have the charge here, that allows me to avoid hitting this. I can go in there. Basically, my choices are hitting both of these. No guts, no glory. Let's do that. And then we'll get a double hit on him. No, we won't get a double hit on him. We can't do... Yeah, so... I mean, if I shift up this way, I could get a double hit on him, but that's no fun. Let's hit the weak guy here. What about this other one? Do I want to hit somebody at -2? Not really. So I will just advance a little bit and not actually attack. And then we push in with the charge. We have to make a charge attempt, or a reluctance check. I got a -1 on this. That's helpful. Hey, we make it. Okay, so that means I get to hit just that. That means he gets to hit just this, because he's facing like this. And everything else is set. We get another charge here. This is against a mounted man. I don't think there's a countercharge when you're disordered. And that's part of why I did it, but... Okay, we have to check the base results of charge. Yeah, you can't charge or countercharge if you're disordered. So this just goes in and there's no reluctance. And let's roll some dice. Henry's troops ended up retired. Another one ended up in the bag there. That's this, giving me continued attack against these pikemen. We're just kind of plowing right through. That feels very medieval, to tell you the truth. Like just breaking through and leaving units behind and whatnot. Well, we crunched into these and didn't get a very good die roll. We got a very bad die roll. That's got him down to 10, which means he's in no danger yet, but he's getting awfully close. And that's a good reason to activate a standard if we get a chance. However, it's still his shot. I'm going to take a shot at this guy. That's got to be wrong. I just fired this off. So I'm at a 5, unless I'm mistaken about something. But I'm going to trigger him. Not good. Goes over. Might be time to trigger that standard, get some units recovering, moving, whatever. What's up with Henry? I don't know. Like, this is the problem. Henry's in deep shit. If I recover, I give up the momentum. I have to roll again, and he, of course, I know he has a couple of chits. I don't know they're both seizures, but he's already used a seizure. Oh, I just don't know. Like, I can survive this. I won't have to trigger it this turn, but this is beginning to get full, and that's a problem. So I think I do have to trigger it. Those all recovered. That point got there, but I got a failure. That puts me over to a free activation over here. I just switched batteries and have both charging now. But I think I need to refill pipe, and I'll come up. Take care of some stuff that I should have done before. I'm trying to figure out which side I want attacking. Look, this guy's not in great shape. He's definitely my secondary, so I'll be continuing my attacks with Simon. And then rotating around is my view, taking out the flank. Yeah, delaying with Edward didn't help that much, did it? Have me a bit of a problem. 1, 2, 3, 5. These guys are in command. That's about it. We got any out of command markers? Yes, we do. Okay, so this force is out of command. This guy's out of command. And I'm pretty sure that means I can't move into combat. I don't usually get into this kind of position. Or notice it, one way or the other. Can't move adjacent or charge. Countercharge. Can't countercharge a unit that's not adjacent. Can't move into a hex with an enemy standard or leader. Or move if I begin adjacent to an enemy. Which means I can launch an attack on him through the flank, which looks pretty good. What happened? Well, I didn't get an activation there after that. That's what happened. But yeah, otherwise, I'm going to have to try to figure out how to launch this attack. These aren't engaged, so I can keep shooting him. That's kind of cool. Oh, you could countercharge though and get out of the way of that. I don't want to do that, right? Oh, is he disordered? He is this. He's not the mounted men-at-arms. That's some fucking archers that the king went to. Oh, they're just doomed. A couple attacks. I can still swing around here, try to get in contact with these guys. That looks like it'll get me there. And an attack on that poor thing. Well, not poor thing, that powerful thing. That is about equal because I'm hitting it from the flank. Successful continuation, launching a couple of, just one attack here. These guys are just going to recover. And try to catch their way up to the rest of the command. Let's just do this one. +2, +3 for the leader. Gets disordered. Gets me a 5. Defender retired. We're trying to finish off Henry's set here. Now, if I recall correctly, if any units get retired, they're going to be eliminated because there's no spaces adjacent to the standard. This is a problem. Like, the single army standards are a lot harder to operate with than per unit standards. And once you start losing, the whole army starts falling apart. It's kind of weird. I don't know what makes the decision of why to give a single standard for the whole army versus one for separate factions. I can see different reasons for it, but not sure any of them make a hell of a lot of sense. It also throws your units further away from, or your disordered stuff further away from where you perhaps want it. Like having 3 different standards out there would have allowed me to move the standards close to the units and whatnot, give them rallying points, just a single army rallying point. In a way, I would say, so oddly enough, you would say, well, these armies are more organized or something like that. It actually feels like they're more disorganized if they have a single banner. But from the scenarios that I've seen, it kind of feels like the more organized forces. I don't know. Like, I feel like there's a more unified, as time goes on, you get a more unified army, but maybe that's wrong, you know? You're seeing both the Saxons and the Normans and the Norwegians, all of whom you kind of think of as maybe more primitive, but I think their armies were actually more effective than these later sort of high medieval armies. The thing is, though, the separate standards feels more like they're separate commands, right? That are really kind of individual. The effect of it, though, is definitely less valuable for the force that has singular flags. It would be kind of interesting. Like, I mean, does it really make sense that the Barons is more singular? Were they? I don't know. Were they more disorganized as well? Maybe. Kind of a Civil War kind of feeling to it. Henry's battle has pretty much dissolved. Some of it's back at the standard, and he's there. He has been having an extraordinary, successful run of not getting killed by all these attacks against him. That pretty much says the game is over. We could probably just call it here. But I got continuations to make. What do I want to do? I just did Montfort. I think I'll try to move, who's this, Suffolk? Sir Henry of Montfort. I don't know who the hell he is. Is he like Simon's son or something? I don't think so. Does it say? Not there. Who is Sir Henry? Henry? I don't know who he is. It's kind of weird because Montfort is, what, French, I think. I don't know. Anyway, let's try an activation for him. I thought I had him flipped over for some reason, and he shouldn't be. So that's a 5-4-3. And he gets to take his move. And we can start positioning ourselves for an attack either on the banner, which is not too bad, or smashing up over here. I mean, not optimal. What am I going to do? I think I need to activate Henry, of all things, to get his forces off the banner. 0 or 1, the game's over. I'm going to make that roll now, rather than move any of Henry's pieces. Like, I could move Henry's pieces, or I could attack with this. It doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to activate Henry, but let me just see. All right, so I did not get the 0 or 1. This battle's over. Henry and Edward are probably captured, as they were historically. Simon gets to rule as chancellor or whatever, and that means the next battle is actually valid. Not that we wouldn't do it anyway, but yeah. So up this one goes. We saw the advantage to the defense for the first time. Why? The stronger side, definitely. But here's the big thing. And this is, Hastings just felt too easy. Some of those other battles, I could say, okay, I don't know this battle very well. The defensive values on the Saxon units and or the effectiveness of the shield wall, certainly not both, but also the effectiveness of an outflank. Like, there just weren't enough units to defend the position that was present at Hastings. Definitely Hastings felt way too easy for the Normans. This battle, I could buy it, Again, I don't know Lewes all that well. I don't know a number of these. Wow, that's a really weird way to write it. Yeah, that's a W, all right. Wow. Looks like an N with a big tail. I'm assuming that's, some kind of real usage of the time. Wow. Okay, up it goes, I guess.